what's up guys, Auto Fanatics. So, very exciting video today that I finally got my hands on a 2022 C8 Corvette Z51 convertible. This car, like I said, has been on my radar for a couple of years. I actually had a 2020 on order, and unfortunately with all the stuff that's happening with the strikes and the shutdowns, I actually canceled it and I sold my spot to one of my clients and I moved on because I just got tired of waiting. So, you know what, like I said, a lot of my customers and fans have been getting this car. They've been selling their Shelbys, they've been selling their Alfa Romeos, and I just thought it was a good opportunity to get my hands on one, do a full drive review, and I'm going to try to go over as much detail on this car to share with you guys. I'm also going to make a lot of references to a lot of the stuff from Europe, whether it's a McLaren, an Audi, a Ferrari, whatever, because this is the very first American sports car with a mid-engine design. So this car has been in the making for a very, very long time through General Motors, and they finally did it. But like I said, I got the top down now, and I think it looks really, really cool. This color is called Ceramic Matrix Gray. This is a 2LT specification. It's got red seats, black console, black dash. You can see that there with the red stitching. Pretty cool spec, and it's got some light blue seat belts. I'm not sure about that, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the design of the car, because some people love it, some people hate it. I think it's going to be subjective, but to be honest with you, if you guys are really not in love with the style of this car, you just got to see some of these cars customized, because the wheels that come from GM, I think they're horrible. I don't care which wheel you get. It really doesn't give the car a very macho, tough, aggressive look. It just doesn't do that. So when you change the wheels, you put like a 20 in the front, a 21 in the back, you lower the suspension 1 inch, you do all the carbon aero on the bottom by RSC or whatever other brand, you put a different wing on the back. These things look really, really good. Stock, they're kind of mundane, they're a little subtle. It's not my favorite stock, but some people love it or hate it, but I think it looks pretty good. And you got to understand, it's their very, very first attempt at doing a mid-engine sports car. So as far as the styling goes, let's talk about this. General Motors, for quite a number of years, I think it goes back to like 2010, they started with this real modern angular design language where they're doing a lot of creases. You can't really see it in this color, but there's just a lot of body creases, and it's a very chiseled look. And depending on the color, it'll flop a little bit more in the paint on this, but you can see it in the camera right there. All the little body lines, and the way this is all carved in. You got your, aerodynamics for your coolers all through the front. Everything is done, purposeful. But, it's pretty controversial back here. Some people love this and some people hate it. Personally, I am not a huge fan of the deviated color stake on the side. I just think it looks a little weird. Personally, I think on the new upcoming ZL6, they did a much better job on how they integrated this into the design. Another thing I want to tell you too, for anybody that's really OCD about keeping their cars clean, this car kicks up dirt so bad up to the belt liner of the door down that, I'm constantly cleaning it up, with detail spray and trying to keep this car clean for this video. That's just something that I wanted to share with you guys. There's going to be a watch video as well. So I actually think the taillights are cool. You love it or hate it, I think they look good. They light up really well. The square exhaust tips are kind of controversial as well, but the car is so boxy and chunky, I just think it makes sense, but you got to get an aftermarket exhaust in this car regardless. It's just way too quiet, especially for my taste. So just want to show you guys real quick. To get into the car, you stick your hand under here and you actuate it just like that. So it's kind of got like a hidden door handle. The sill is a little bit bigger than I would have liked. It's definitely bigger than like on a McLaren as far as to get in and out. So you will scuff up and damage, this. So this is probably a good area to do paint protection film all along here and all along here as well. So the one thing I'll notice inside the cabin so far is it's got a really good amount of room compared to the C6 and C7s that I've, driven and worked on over the years, but it's got a lot more leg room. And I'm gonna get in the cabin in a couple of minutes. We're gonna put the top up and I'm gonna show you some more about that. So on this trim level, you're not getting the soft Napa grade leather everywhere, but whatever you're getting nice soft touch materials. You have the red, nice deviated French stitching that goes all the way down, and the stitching is actually pretty consistent. Sometimes you see these cars and it's all over the place, especially when they do a deviated color. So this is a nice touch. It doesn't feel, high end. It doesn't give you that soft leather feel like you would get in a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or an Audi R8. It just doesn't have that feel, this particular spec. And I probably would tell you guys, if that's what you're after, you're probably gonna wanna go up to a 3LT. And now, you know, a 3LT convertible loaded is well over $100,000 plus the markup right now. So you got to really think about what you want out of this car. Are you buying it, you know, for the performance, the engineering, and the value? Or, you know, do you kind of want everything all wrapped into one, including the luxurious interior and the quality? But, you know, you go down here, you know, this is a little tough to get used to, is this little center stack. It's very, very untraditional. Porsche, I feel, does a better job by integrating the buttons on the center stack than this. It hasn't really annoyed me. I haven't really navigated and wasted time using that yet, but overall, everything is pretty well laid out, you know, specifically for the driver, not the passenger. And that's pretty good. I mean, as far as the ergonomics, you know, you're gonna get a couple of cheap things, actually quite a few cheap things on this. These air conditioning vent little things here, these things feel cheap, and they actually remind me of a Saab from the 1990s. I just don't like this, and I think General Motors, they spent all this money on this car. They really could have did a much better job on something like this. I don't know what they were thinking on that, but like I said, there's cost cutting. There's always gonna be cost cutting going along with any of these car brands today. So you have the airbag integrated into the seat. It's not integrated into the door panel. The seats are super comfortable, very stylish. I have no issues with lumbar. The adjustments are abundant. There's no issues with that whatsoever. So I'm gonna put the top up real quick, and then we're gonna talk some more about the interior. There we go. So it's fully automatic. There's nothing to do. You could actually do the top raising and lowering up to 30 miles an hour. And this is a really, really slick system. You don't have to unlatch it. Everything is one touch. You get the little icon on the thing. It says folding top, motion complete. The windows go up and you're ready to go. So let's just talk some more about the interior of this car. All right, guys, so now we're in the cabin. We got the top up, the roof is up. I just want to talk about some of the design, the materials, some of the things that I love and some that I hate. So now, like I mentioned in the video, this is not the top of the line 3LT spec with all the Napa soft grade leather. It does have soft touch materials. Everything is stitched very nicely. Now, on the very early 2020 models, General Motors was struggling, and there was huge production delays because they could not get the stitching to line up between these adjacent panels right here. I don't know, they were all sloppy and all over the place. This one is actually not bad. It's not 100% perfect, but let me tell you, I do custom upholstery, and getting stitching like that around these contours, and when you're doing it in a production environment where you don't physically have the car assembled to line everything up, it becomes very, very difficult. So, you know, you can't really fault them for having issues with that. It's growing pains, and like I said, this is the nicest interior that they've ever done on a Corvette to date. So, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I don't really love this here. You know, when I first saw the photos of this car, it was a little controversial because I was like, oh no, they just put a big screen on the dash, just like an Audi and a Mercedes. But to be honest with you, it's not terrible. This is like an iPad mini that was kind of like integrated really nicely. Now, this little stack here, I think, you know, car manufacturers, when they try to go in this direction, I just think other car manufacturers just do a better job, specifically Porsche. I just think Porsche does a much better job when they come down the center tunnel with all their buttons and everything's just integrated just a little bit nicer and a little bit cleaner. Now, everything is driver focused. This is not focused on the passenger side. So if you're on the passenger side of this car, your girlfriend, your wife, your friend, and you want to start changing the HVAC, it is a little bit of a pain in the neck to do it. So it's kind of like you don't have your own controls on that side. Everything is kind of here, and it's driver-centric focused. Okay, so now you have this little pod right here, and it just says mode. This is really only your mode selector. I'm not really sure why they went with this type of a design, whereas on a Mercedes, BMW, and a lot of European cars, they have the wheel, and the wheel will scroll through like all various different options. But you know, you have two wheels on the steering wheel, and this is all touchscreen as well. So we're gonna get the car fired up right now. And I gotta say, there's one thing that really bothers me aesthetically, and as far as the touch, is, like I said, these cheap air conditioning little sliders right here. It just doesn't look good. So when you start the car up, the first thing, as soon as you look at the screen, is this. The first thing that just catches your eye is this. Now, maybe aftermarket companies, or maybe if I pick up one of these cars, I'll design it and I'll make it something out of like billet aluminum, or just something a little bit nicer that you could put on all these air conditioning control levers right here. It would just make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Right now, I just don't like seeing this cheap, shiny black plastic thing, whereas the rest of the interior is really, really well put together. There's no squeaks and rattles. I've driven this thing on some really bad roads, whereas on a C7, I had a bunch of those that customers gave me and friends bought. they rattled like you wouldn't believe. I mean, from the roof and the windshield, and it just, everything just rattled like crazy. I hated those cars. This thing is a completely different car. The quality, the fit and finish, everything lines up really well. Everything is put together really well. There's really no complaints. When you open and close the doors, it doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like, you know, you get that rattling at the bottom of the door. Everything feels really good, okay? They did a really good job engineering this. Now, something else that I'll discuss, I'm playing around with the radio. This has Apple CarPlay and all that. We're not gonna go into the infotainment. All the buttons here, primarily, this is all your HVAC, okay? Your HVAC is all controlled here. You have passenger side, driver's side, all of that stuff. So that's all this is done. And I personally think they probably could have done away with this host center stack and kind of made this a little bit more open and integrated this into the touchscreen, or possibly put, you know, some manual levers for the passenger and the driver. I think they could have just done it a little differently, but this is what they gave us, and this is what you're pretty much stuck with. Now, something really interesting, when you look at the buttons for the dual clutch, okay, this little push up right here, the shape of this is very similar to the Lamborghini. The Huracan, where it has the red lever that you lift up, this is very similar as far as the shape and the angularity of it to that. I just want to just make that, you know, point across, because I've been in those cars so many times, and I myself have been looking to possibly get a Huracan Evo, but I don't know about that right now. I'm just playing around with it. Now, when I'm driving this car, a couple other things that annoy me, like quirks, are the feel of the stalks. It just feels cheap. It's nothing you could really do about that. But it's when you're driving the car and you're downshifting and upshifting, and let's just say you're going to go into a turn and then you have to hit your signal, or, you know, if you want to drive legally. I've had an issue where, as I was driving, I had an issue hitting the lever, all right, for the turn signals. And I just think that's because I'm used to driving my Alfa Romeo and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and other cars that have longer column-mounted paddle shifters, and this car doesn't have that. Now, on the steering wheel, you get the Z mode, okay, which is the Z51 pack. So you're going to go through here. You have steering, engine, shift, brake feel, engine sound. And I'm going to talk more about the performance of this car, of course, in the driving portion. This, I just wanted to highlight and give you a little bit of an overview over the cockpit, the fit and finish. Also, visibility so far has been phenomenal. I have no issues with blind spots, even through the back flat rear window. And what's really cool is the technology that you're getting in this car. You have a standard glass mirror, and then you hit this little lever here, and it goes to a full widescreen backup camera. So I really like the fact that they integrated that into the car, and it just makes it a lot easier. So you're not gonna have to worry about, you know, backing the car up into a tree or into your driveway pillar, because you could actually see either way just by the flick of a button. You have your OnStar integrated. Everything is kind of basic. Now, this one here doesn't have the Alcantara headliner. That is an option on the 3LTs. You could do this in different color with stitching and all that. But like I said, for what you're getting, you know, this car is really all about the engineering, the practicality, and the value. Remember that, the engineering, the practicality, and the value. I'm going to discuss in my final thoughts of this video at the end, after we drive it, and I comment on the driving dynamics, the brakes, the steering, the handling, the understeer, the transmission. I'm going to discuss all of that further, and then we're going to wrap this video up, and I'm going to kind of give you my final thoughts as far as where this car is positioned, why it's so popular, and why it's such a significant leap for an automaker in America to have progressed with technology, with the consumer demands, because the C6 and C7s were not very good selling cars in terms of the volume. People just didn't love it. And those cars catered to a certain demographic age audience. They always called it the midlife crisis car. This car has a massive, much broader appeal, much younger appeal. People that are in their teens are loving the C8s, versus they didn't really love the earlier generations of this car. They used to call it an old man's car. Everybody wanted the Ferrari, everybody wanted the Lamborghini, you know, and I get it, you know, I grew up in that time. But this car really, really is pretty cool, and it's very, very special for what it is. So we're gonna get the camera strapped in. I'm gonna go up north for about an hour. We're gonna do various different drive clips. I'm gonna piece them together, and then we're gonna conclude this video. All right, guys, so we're gonna go for a little bit of a drive, and we're gonna start with some local roads, then we're gonna just jump on the parkway, and we're gonna see how quiet it is. Now, I will tell you, because I've been driving the car for a couple hours already today, that the interior cabin noise does get a little loud. Like I said, it is a convertible, but you also have Michelin tires. Michelin tires are not the best when it comes to road isolation, but they are the best for handling. So the one thing that really impresses me the most when, you know, the Corvette had the earlier generations, C5, C6, C7, they were really using an archaic design with the suspension by using a composite transverse leaf spring, front and rear. So whenever I drove any of those cars on the New York busted roads, and you're gonna come along for a ride, and you're gonna get an example of, you know, how practical can this car be based on where you live and your driving conditions. So the driving conditions are far from ideal for a sports car in New York, especially in the metro area closer to the city. But this car soaks up the bumps really well because it's got a super stiff aluminum space frame. And you got to understand something too. You know, everything's the big craze now with composites and carbon fiber. Yeah, don't get me wrong, the carbon fiber and all that is definitely the way to go, but it's cost prohibitive. So General Motors pretty much pioneered the use of aluminum in a space frame monocoque design with the Corvette platform. So they've been doing it, you know, well over 35 years, I believe. You know, whereas Ferrari did not come out with an aluminum supercar, mid-engine supercar, sports car, until 1999 with the release of the 360 Modena. That was a huge leap for Ferrari, partnering up with Alcoa, and then they also went more into a mass-produced type of car where the volume just went through the charts, and that's pretty much the same platform and same technological processes that they're using still today in all their cars primarily, unless you're getting like the supercars. But so General Motors, not only do they have the longest expertise in doing the aluminum construction, way before Audi was doing it on the R8 and Lamborghini with the Gallardo and all that stuff. So they have that as an advantage, okay? So they know how to work with the material. They know how to increase stiffness, torsional rigidity, and reduce weight. So that's what I notice when I'm driving this car, is a very well-engineered chassis platform, okay? It is absolutely superb. Also, all the aluminum suspension, the control arms, knuckles, everything is aluminum as well, okay? Some of the stuff is cast, some of it's forged, it really depends. So they didn't cheap out like Ford does with the Shelbys by putting a lot of stamped steel on there with the subframes and all the control arms and all that. So this car, really, it's an American mid-engine, high-performance sports car. And it has engineering that really is aligned with stuff that's cost 2, 3, and 4 times the amount coming out of Europe. And that's really, you know, why people love these cars, because it's the value, you know, and I talk about that too. And I'm gonna kind of wrap this all up, but I tell you one thing, it's not giving me that pogo effect into my pelvis. And I have, you know, a serious lower back injury, and driving the GT350R, driving a car like an Alfa Romeo 4C, even a Porsche GT4, you know, smaller car, smaller wheelbase, it's very, very stiff, and they become very, very hard for someone like me to use. And I think a lot of guys that are buying these cars, they don't want to have a car that's going to totally beat them up all the time. So here we are on the highway, we're doing 70. We're in normal mode, I'm not pushing it. I do feel a little bit of a dead zone in the steering. It's not as direct, it's not as sharp as a Ferrari or a McLaren or my Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio. Now versus like my GT350R, which really isn't even a comparable car. That car has such a gigantic footprint. You could kind of feel the front end a hell of a lot more on the Shelby than you can on this. But whereas on this car, you could point it and it does go in, and it's very limited understeer that I'm feeling on the street, but it feels very balanced. It's very comfortable, very balanced. It's a little bit loud in here. You're probably gonna notice that in my audio, but there's really not much we could do about that. This is, you know, as real driving as it's gonna get. So we're gonna ride this up a little bit, and then the road in about 1.5 miles, 2 miles is gonna get really choppy. And I specifically wanna shoot this content for you guys. If you live in Chicago, you live in Ohio, you live in Michigan, New York, whatever, when you have bad roads, you may be considering, hey, is this car good enough? Is it strong enough and compliant enough to handle those broken roads, thanks to our wonderful infrastructure in this country? And is the car gonna beat you up? And I'm gonna tell you right now, no, it's not gonna beat you up. The stiff aluminum frame on this car and suspension handles it with ease, but I wanna do the video and I wanna show you guys because I've been driving it, you know, all day now. The one disappointment, and I'm going to reiterate that further on in this video, is the engine sound. It just doesn't have an emotional bark, okay? Even if you were to go and put, you know, a louder exhaust in the car, maybe that would definitely help bring a little bit more character into the car. But right now, my personal opinion, I just think the car LT1 that's powering this car, it just doesn't have that character and that soul that you really want in a high-performance car, especially a mid-engine car. I mean, listen, this car could have been a hybrid where you have no noise whatsoever, but I just think if you're a driving enthusiast and you love to drive, and you know, a mid-engine sports car you want for the balance and the performance and everything, you want a little bit more character, a little bit more soul in the car. And we're not in the Z mode yet. We're going to click that when the traffic eases up. This portion of the video is just going to kind of give you a little gist of what we're doing here on the highway. And I want to make this video as comprehensive, as detailed as possible. I'm not doing it, you know, for length, trying to make a 15-minute video. I really want people that watch this video to have enough information that I'm going to share with you based off the content and the driving footage to go out and make a proper informed decision whether this car is the right car for your lifestyle, okay? Because we're not really going to talk about 0 to 60 and top speed and all that. We don't, you know, there's tons of videos, there's tons of stats you guys could go already check out if that's really what you want to buy a car for. Is for the numbers on paper. You know, there's plenty of content for you guys to look on the internet for that. But I really want to give you guys real practical driving of this car. Now, another reason I got this car for a few days is I wanted to see, can something like this be daily driven? Whereas, in my opinion, my Shelby is just too rough. It's just too rough of a car. It just can't handle these New York roads, and it beats the hell out of you up. And that's something that, unfortunately, is the reason why I don't drive it and do a lot of content on it anymore. But now the road is going to get real choppy. Unfortunately, I'm just forewarning you, there are speed bumps every so often on this road. Now the road goes into concrete, okay? Where you hear the tire noise is a lot louder that we switched over to concrete. That's something that you're going to notice in Florida, you know, on the concrete highways down there. And especially if they have the grooves, you're going to get a lot more roar, a lot more cabin noise. So whereas if you're driving this car in Florida, just drop the top and cruise with it, and you know, that's pretty much how you're going to use it. But look at this road. This thing is really busted up. And I used to ride this road sometimes 2 or 3 times a day when I was going to undergrad up here. And I can't even tell you how many times I had to replace suspension parts because it just destroys it. You know, going back in the 90s. But of course, cars weren't as sophisticated and well built as they are today. But, you know, there's no bump steer. There's no tram lining. The car, like you can see the way I'm holding the wheel, it's very neutral and it's very easy to drive. Okay, and that's really where I want to emphasize with this drive video. So, speed bump. There goes another one. Boom. And I'm like, you can see the steering wheel. I'm not even holding it. And it stays perfectly straight. Okay? That's based on the suspension geometry, the stiff chassis, and the way this car is reacting. So all the resonance and frequencies that are coming through the road into the cabin, it's not jolting me. I don't have any issues where it's giving me that pogo effect in the bottom of my spine. Totally comfortable. I would be happy in this car driving it for hours and it wouldn't bother me. So we're going to go further north, okay? And then when we get off, the roads are going to be a lot smoother. All right, guys, so I'm going to do an acceleration here. We're going to go into Z mode just to show you guys. Z mode, manual mode. You can hear the exhaust open up a little bit. Here we go. I mean, you could just see this thing moves, man. This thing moves. It may have an old pushrod designed motor, but it definitely moves. And the dual clutch from Tremec is absolutely phenomenal. The upshifts are incredible. Absolutely incredible. The engine, like I said, it's just, the sound is just not there. There's no emotion in it. Okay, there's your downshift. So we're gonna go on this real small, narrow, twisty road, and we're gonna see how this car can handle it. because if you had a Porsche GT4, it's definitely a better instrument for something like this, I think. It's just smaller. Got some blind spots. Yeah, the engine's just making a lot of noise. The road's a little wet, so I'm not going to push it too hard. But I really want to see how neutral the handling is going through a road like this. Transmission is phenomenal, it really is. Oh, man, this road is sketchy. See, that's the one thing I don't like, this paddles on the steering wheel. So you could beat on the car. You could have some fun with this. You definitely can. I'm just not used to these paddles on the steering wheel. I'm really not. I keep searching for them on the column. And on a real good performance car that has them on the column, you could just transition a little bit easier, I think. Yeah, she's doing good, man. She's doing good. The handling is definitely very flat, very neutral. I wish there was a little bit more steering feedback, but that's just what you got to deal with. And I do know this particular car, you could do a track alignment, and it's supposed to make it feel even better. And I definitely think that would probably help this a lot. Got to get this this EV out of my way in front of me, this Tesla Model 3. I did a video on one of those months back. It's a pretty cool car. I don't think I would ever buy one, but it's definitely a cool car. All right, we're going to go away from him. All right, let's go here. All right. I'm about 50% throttle. I don't want to push it because the speed limit of where I'm at, and the roads are a little wet. It's a little chilly. See, what I'm really missing now, I'm going to be honest, it's that emotion. I'm missing that sound of the GT350R. I'm missing that sound of my Alfa Romeo. I'm missing that sound of a Ferrari or Lamborghini, with that NA sound. It's just, there's something about it that... It's not about the speed, it's about the sensory experience with that emotion. The heart of a car is the engine. It's always the engine. And I'm going to talk more about this in my final thoughts of this car. But this car is very impressive to drive. It really is. And it's easy to drive. Whereas on a Ferrari, whether it's a 458, a 488 F8, that chassis is far from perfect, and the back of the car will snap and get you killed real fast if you don't know what you're doing. This car feels a hell of a lot more planted and a bit safer to push. Very similar. This car, the balance of this car feels very similar to a Lamborghini, like the Gallardo Huracan type car. Yeah, it just doesn't give you that rush, that adrenaline, like, that roar that we're looking for. Unfortunately, that's just what it doesn't have. So we're gonna let this car go. It's crazy. The further north you go, these roads are soaking wet with all the snow that melted and the temperature change. It's like the ground is thawing out. Now we're gonna make a U-turn here. Manual mode. So I noticed that when I put it into reverse and back in the drive, it did not maintain the manual function, so you had to hit it again. But see, this is where you could enjoy this car. Not on the potholes, not really cruising straight on a highway. And if you don't have roads like this, I feel bad for you guys to have sports cars, because I got a lot of customers in Florida that have these, and I'm like, they're cruising on 95, which is a straight run, but until you have the elevations and the changes, you're not really going to enjoy this chassis for what it was. Yeah, man, I'm having fun. I'm having fun. I'm not having fun because of the sound and the engine. The dual clutch is phenomenal. The brakes are great. And the chassis is great. So I'm still having some fun. But there's a little dead zone in the steering that I'm not a fan of. Like a little bit of play. Okay, there's police over there, so they're probably waiting to catch somebody like me driving aggressively on these back roads. But yeah, the car's fun. It really is. You know, these are small, narrow roads. They get a lot of elevation changes. You're going up, you're going down, you're going into a corner. And that's really how you're going to know that the car that you're in can handle it. Does it feel sketchy? Does it feel nervous? I don't feel nervous at all. I mean, this is the first time I ever pushed this car. And I have total 100% confidence that it's not going to kill me, which is really what you want. You know, some cars, you got to be real careful because they could be real sketchy. All right, guys, just had to put some fuel in the car, and we're just going to head back on the highway. The portion on the way back is a lot smoother, so just want you guys to actually hear it in the audio. And I'm curious to see how the cabin noise is going to be recorded through the audio recorder and all the microphones that I have in the car. If the tire roar and that noise is going to kind of drown my voice out, I don't know, but we'll see. But the car is actually pretty cool. When you're driving on the highway or on a long stretch of road at like between 40 and 50, it does a cylinder deactivation, so it knocks it down to 4 cylinders, and believe it or not, that's actually good for fuel economy. So we're going to go back into Z mode, manual mode, of course. The one thing, there's a noise that's coming from behind my head. It's a little bit annoying. It sounds like an electric fan, and the blade is kind of doing some weirdness, like something's weird or broken. It almost reminds me of an old school muscle car with a Chevy 350 that has a mechanical fan, and the fan is wobbling and it makes a noise. That's what this sounds like. And it's coming from the driver's side, but God only knows, you know, the maintenance of this car or what it needs. It might just be something that has to be fixed. But so we're cruising. This road is smooth. But yeah, you're getting a lot of interior cabin noise from the tires and just the what's coming through into the car, which means that the glass is not isolating the outside very well. It's a little windy today. It's not throwing the car anywhere, so aerodynamically this car seems to be performing quite well. You know, some cars you get into, they look like sports cars, and then you get on a windy day and it's throwing you all over the road and tramlining, and it scares the hell out of you. And I'm not a fan of cars like that. Look, I'm driving totally comfortable. I got plenty of room. Like I said, my only complaint, like to drive long on the highway with the top up, and I don't think the noise has anything to do with this being a retractable convertible, because to be honest with you, the other version of this car has a removable targa. So this car's platform was originally designed to have the roof taken off. So I don't think, you know, it's not resonance coming in. It's just coming in through the floorboards, through the glass, and through the tires. And when you're driving the car spiritedly, when you stop the car, you hear those fans. They start kicking up, you know, really quickly to cool the engine and everything down, because it's in a tight, confined area. And that's how mid-engine cars are. So instead of having one big radiator, they break up the radiators and the cooling system in sections, left side, right side, and you know, the plumbing is done a little bit differently and how they integrate it. And that's what those wide ducts are on the side of the cars for cooling. But no, the car is definitely a lot of fun, and I'm going to pull over in a little while and get out, take a little bit of a breather, and then I'm going to give you guys my final thoughts on everything. So some of you guys have like been dying to know what my opinion is going to be on this car, so definitely stay tuned to the rest of the video, and I'm going to share that as soon as I pull over. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, let's just get out and we'll talk about my final thoughts of the C8 Corvette. Now, like I said, The styling is subjective. You either love it or hate it. It is what it is, okay? Because really, there is no other mid-engine, all aluminum sports car you could buy for under $100,000. It just doesn't exist. So the only complaints that I really have on this car, I think the number one complaint is the engine. The engine just has no soul. There's no emotion in it. I personally just don't like it. I don't like the way the power builds up. The transmission is so damn good, it's almost like a disservice to have that engine made it to that gearbox. But like I said, GM is GM. They're gonna use whatever they have in the parts bin, and you know, it's just, you just feel it. When you know cars and you get to drive a lot of sports cars and you have other cars to compare it to, you're gonna come back a little bit disappointed, not at the power. The car's got the power, acceleration, it's there. The transmission is phenomenal, chassis is phenomenal, suspension is phenomenal. Build quality is good. I don't think that this is on par with a Lamborghini or an Audi R8. I just think those cars just take it up quite a bit. Now, this is a 2LT. I probably would suggest anybody that wants a little bit more of a posher interior, get the 3LT. You're gonna get the better leather, the better stitching, Alcantara in the headliner and all that. I just think that's gonna be better if that's really what you're after, but now you're definitely gonna break the $100,000 MSRP. A couple of things that I look for when I buy a car. It's number one, styling. You gotta be in love with the style. Either you love it or hate it. You know, this is a pretty sexy car. The amount of thumbs up that I got in this car today, I just can't believe it. People taking pictures, thumbs up on the highway. Every time I park it, they're going to get gas. Everybody's coming up and crowding around the car. And it's in like a, you know, muted color. It's a pearlescent, light grayish white color. It's not like a flashy red or a blue. So, you know, it definitely is an eye catcher, you know, and it's stock. And I said in the beginning of the video, I don't like these cars stock. You got to lower it. You got to change these wheels. I just don't like the wheels that GM is doing. I hated the wheels on the C7, every single one of them, unless you got the Z06, but I don't like these wheels, and I think the wheels, lowering it and doing some of the carbon fiber aero really would take this car up to a much more aesthetic that might be a little bit more stimulating to people that want that exotic and more like European vibe, you know, with the exposed carbon fiber and all of that. I think that's really where you should go with it. Now, there's a situation. These cars are hard to get. On the market right now, like this car's under 100 grand, they're going, there's probably about 1,000 C8s for sale right now. Some of them are pre-owned, some of them are new, and they're going anywhere between 10,000 to 50,000 over sticker. Okay, think about that for a minute. 50,000 over sticker. And I'm gonna tell you right now, and I hope you guys appreciate what I'm gonna tell you, because I don't suggest anybody to run out. If you guys have been eyeing this car up, you know, you've been home for 2 years and working from home, and you know, you got that itch to buy a Corvette and this thing fits into your budget, I just want to advise you from a financial standpoint and an investment standpoint. I mean, cars aren't always an investment, but if you're going to spend $150,000 and you want a mid-engine sports car, I'm going to tell you right now, go buy yourself an Audi R8, go buy yourself a Ferrari F430 or a Ferrari 360. Number one, you're going to get a better return on investment, and I feel that those cars have far more emotion based on the engine. Even though the transmissions are nowhere near as good as this, they're gonna have far more emotion, and I think you're gonna have a much better driving experience. Yes, they could be maintenance hogs, don't get me wrong. This is an American car, you can fix it yourself, you can scan it with any OBD2 scanner, but I just feel, you know, that GM created this car, and this is the foundation. The new Z06, I think that's gonna be the one that everybody's gonna want. So if you're the guy that is like me, you like Italian exotics, you like German exotics, or you know, even like a McLaren, those cars are awesome. And you want something with more emotion and a little bit more involvement, then the Z06 is probably gonna hit the ticket. The problem is the car's sold out for 4 years. I tried to order one, they sent me my check back saying, sorry, we're sold out for 4 years, there's too many orders. So the Z06 is gonna come out, and mark my words, if the market is still the way it is, they're gonna be selling for $250,000, $275,000. Now you have to think about it. How bad do you really want to drive that Z06, an American-made sports car that may have, you know, the creaking cup holder and may have some build quality issues with the panel gaps? I mean, this one's pretty decent, but I'll show you guys right here. Like the panel gap up here is not perfect. It's very wide up here and it's narrower on the bottom. Paint quality looks good. You know, I don't see any unevenness or waviness or anything like that, but it's still an American-produced car made by union workers. So, you know, and I think that's really what the hype is. And I think I'm kind of glad that I had the opportunity to drive this car for the day and into tomorrow and the next couple of days. Because if I went out and I ordered, you know, I ordered the 2020, okay? And I got tired of the pushbacks and the supply shortages, and then the pandemic hit, so that just went down the toilet. That's why I sold my spot and made a few dollars and I moved on. Now, do I regret not taking delivery at sticker of the C8 that I ordered. And I'm gonna be 100% honest, no. The reason for that is I have amazing high performance cars already that really check off all the boxes with the heritage, the styling, the performance, the sound, and the emotion, okay? If I didn't have any of those cars, let's just say I was driving a generic SUV every day, then this probably would just give me a little bit more excitement because it's a nice handling car, it's a nice package. But to be honest with you, after spending time with it and really the shortcomings of the engine, you know, and it is what it is. You know, you're not gonna get anything different from it right now. That's all they're offering is this LT1 motor. But listen, it's a nice car. It drives really, really well, very impressive, very balanced, very neutral. That's something that I wanted to tell you guys, is very neutral. Not once have I drove this car on some of those twisty roads where the roads were wet, it's a little chilly out. The car did not skip, traction control never came on. I never once felt nervous. The seats are awesome. I have no lower back issues whatsoever. It's really pretty good on fuel economy. But I tell you, the things that I come back with are the chassis, phenomenal, suspension, phenomenal, braking system, absolutely great, even though it's stock. I mean, maybe you want to put a Brembo big brake kit on here. That would definitely look cooler. Because like I said, these rotors are, I don't know, they look like they're maybe 14 inches. They don't look too big. The braking in my GT350R, I think, is just way stronger as far as the pulling power versus these, but this car is lighter and a little bit more balanced, and it just handles it really, really well. Transmission is awesome. Upshifts, phenomenal. I can't believe this transmission, how good it is. And I got to say, back on the prior generations of the Corvette, when they had those automatics, oh God, it was such a terrible thing to put those 6 speeds in those cars. Like I said, I hope you enjoyed this video and you got some good feedback. You know, maybe a lot of you guys are on the market for a sports car and this falls within your budget. But, you know, the manual transmission, everybody's saying, oh, if it had a manual transmission, I would buy it. I'm going to tell you right now. Let me just open up the door and I'm going to show you why. Now, when you're in this car, okay, if you were to put a manual gearbox right here, it's going to suck based on the interior design and architecture. It's just not going to work. And if you put the stick here, when you do a hard power shift, you're going to punch the screen. This car, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't miss a manual transmission. I think these mid-engine cars, especially these newer ones, it has that confined cockpit feel. I don't think you're going to really care about the manual transmission. I think what this car really is lacking is emotion and soul, and that's primarily from the driveline, you know, the engine, not the transmission. The transmission is great. It's a really impressive package. I think it's a great value if you could get it at a fair price. And I just want to forewarn you guys, because so many people, even myself, I've been looking at these things like crazy. I'm like, maybe should I pick one up? And to be honest with you, I wouldn't mind picking this car up to do a build on it. You know, customize it, suspension, wheels, brakes, maybe, you know, definitely get some sound in this car, and maybe do a giveaway on the channel. I don't know. But if I was in the market, now that I've driven this car, and I specifically wanted something exotic, mid-engine, in that territory of what this car is, I think I would be disappointed if I bought this car sight unseen. If I bought this car without driving it, I don't think I would be disappointed in the driving aspect of it. I would be disappointed in the sound and that lack of emotion. Now, another thing too that definitely disappoints me is how loud it is inside this cabin. Now, I think GM should really spend a little bit more money and time acoustically isolating this cabin. It would just give it a much more refined, more European feel. Double pane glass, acoustically tune the cabin a little bit better. I just think that's something that really, really needs to be addressed. The car is damn loud inside this car, and you may notice it in the driving portions of the video. You just get a lot of roar, a lot of noise, a lot of ticks. And after a while, you know, you've been in the car a couple of hours, it gets a little annoying. You know, it gets a little annoying. It kind of makes you feel like you're not in a very refined package, even though the underpinnings are so refined and so well engineered. It's the shortcomings of, you know, the creaks in the cup holder and the acoustic inside the cabin that just like, you know, they kind of fell short with that a little bit. That's pretty much it, guys. So there's really not much else I could say. Car's been a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun with it. I definitely recommend anybody go out and drive one. Definitely drive one before you buy it. Rent one. Do whatever you got to do. Don't buy this car sight unseen, especially if you're coming from a GT350 or a 911, a GT3, or anything that's really got a real special engine and that special raw sound. And if you go and buy this sight unseen, you're going to be really, really disappointed. I don't care about putting the exhaust in the car. I think you're just going to be disappointed in the way the power transitions on this engine and the throttle inputs and the sound and the lack of that sound. So like I said, when I buy a car, you know, usually Every car that I own, there's a reason behind it. Number one, there's got to be heritage of the brand. Ferrari, Alfa Romeo, Shelby, you know, they all have racing heritage, you know? So you got the heritage, and then you get the styling, okay? Like my GT350R, it's a very muscular, macho, mean-looking car. You know, everywhere you look at it, it's just, you know, it's a big car, it's heavy. You know, it's not the ideal weight and not the ideal size for a sports car, but in the muscle car territory, you know, it's a muscle car wrapped in a sports car persona. That's really how I say that car, but it's a very special car. That it's the sound, it's the vibrations, it's not just the manual transmission, it's just the way that drivetrain, you know, makes you feel. It's a little bit different, a little bit more connected. Same thing, Ferrari 355. You shift the gears, you hear that 8,000 RPM. My Alfa Romeo, you downshift and you get the pops and the girls. There's just something about it that lends to the emotion, okay? So when I look for a car, it's got to have the heritage. I got to be in love with the styling. I got to like the styling, okay? Those two things have to go hand in hand, the heritage and the styling. Then it has to have the performance. It has to handle good, has to be fast, has to have good brakes. Everything has to be there. It also has to sound good. Then, you know, sometimes it's going to be value. You know, is the car a good value? Does it fit my lifestyle? Can I drive it regularly? Can I enjoy it where I live? Can I use it all year round, or is it a seasonal car? And that's where really what you have to decide what you want in your life, because some of these cars, you could drive, this car you could drive all year round. Honestly, I'd throw snow tires in this and I would drive this thing in the snow. I really would. This thing would be a blast, and I totally wouldn't mind doing videos on that if I had the opportunity to drive a C8 Corvette in the winter in the snow. This thing would be a lot of fun. But other than that, that's just what it is. You have to decide what you want in the car, what your budget is, what's your lifestyle, and where you're gonna be driving this car. I feel bad for people that are buying these for $150,000 and they think they're gonna get their money back in another year or two. I feel really bad for those people because they're making a real foolish decision. And I think if you're gonna spend $150,000, I highly suggest just go buy a pre-owned Ferrari, Audi, Lamborghini, and call it a day. I just think you're gonna get more bang for your dollar, you're gonna get more emotion, and you're gonna get much better resale value. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to the Auto Fanatic channel. And like I said, this was 2 years in the making of me getting my hands on this car. And I just wanted to share all the little nitty gritty of it so you guys can watch it and hopefully make an informed decision if this car is the right car for you. And if not, go keep searching. There's a lot of other cars out there that might be more suitable for you. Somewhat in this price category. If not, you're gonna have to up the budget or possibly start considering pre-owned. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for more content. I'm gonna get back in and enjoy the rest of the drive. Thanks, guys.